Hey, you're more powerful family. You are more powerful. I got that Saturday morning. Hey, maybe I ran stairs too hard and my tongue doesn't work. You're more powerful family and chiropractors. And I'm excited today to have a person that we're developing, woman who is definitely a leader in the healthcare profession, who is motivated, purpose-driven, always has, a story like all of us. They have a story of how we move through challenges in our life. We find our purpose. And the one reason I'm coming on here is, Deborah, you introduced me to a product that helps brain function, which I can always use. If anything can help me calm my ADD, get rid of a little bit of the mental fog, help inspiration and motivation, to make a bigger difference in the world, and I'm in. So you introduced this to me and it made such an immediate impact. You said, well, wait 2 or 3 weeks. And in 2 or 3 hours, I'm like, oh my God, man, I have more mental clarity in 2 hours. So we all have a purpose on here, and man, we got to keep our brain working right, because there's freaking insanity out in the world. So if we don't have mental clarity, how are we going to make a difference in the world? So Debra Drummond, great to have you on, and you're just an amazing person in general.
Wow. Well, thank you. Let's hope I live up to that. That's amazing. Thank you so much for introducing me. And sounds like you've got a really, really, really group of people here that you're talking to. Obviously very high mental achievers, shall we say, conscious people. Conscious, very conscious people. Yes, thank you so much. I mean, I've been in love with health and wellness for, should I say it? Almost 30 years.
Oh my God.
Yikes, right? So interesting how I got into the health field in my 20s was because if anyone's ever been in the music industry, if anyone's ever done that was my background to getting into health and wellness. So maybe I'm a bit of an extremist. If you've been in the health and wellness, music industry, you're up till 2, 3, 4, 5 in the morning is perfectly normal, and managed clubs. And I still love music. As you know, I got a big venture that I'm going to be doing next year to raise consciousness for music. But anyways, I went from the music industry and I went to that lifestyle into searching out something a little healthier. And, as the universe has it, it just went like this. It was just so easy. And so I kind of had my path like most people did. And I landed in starting to learn about personal development. And when I say landed, a book got shot at me one day from, I don't even know where, but it was the book that, when they say changed your life, I had my little, what do they call, dark night of the soul. And I was like, I don't think this decision's going really well.
Yeah.
So
hey, let me interrupt real sec.
Yeah.
Because when I was in college, I wasn't in the music industry, but I was bartending. And usually you say, well, you stay up to 2, 3, 4, 5. No, you start drinking at 2 a.m. So it's like, I'm sure it was like, I need to get out of here or I'm going to die. It's not like, well, like transition. No, there was a point where I said, I'm going to die if I don't change my life.
And you know what? You're exactly right. I tell people I went to one too many funerals of one too many people that were really young, It just was a lifestyle that kind of knocks you on your butt, at the very least, you stay here, So I always say that I looked around the club one day and realized that I didn't want to be sitting in the same bar stool 20, 30 years from now, telling stories of 20, 30 years ago,
Right.
And it was I don't know, I just had some foresight. It was one night I had this foresight and decided to make this change. And so I did. And I landed in the beginning of personal development. So look, I was in my 20s, I'm in my 50s, personal development wasn't on every corner. There wasn't there wasn't people talking online, we didn't have cell phones, there wasn't any Starbucks.
Life coaches.
There were no life coaches, no people you could tap into and get motivation in the morning, right?
Yeah.
There was none of that.
YouTube.
No YouTube. That's cassettes, man. It was cassettes. Cassettes. Like,
hey, don't say anything, but we come from the 8-track age, or that. What are those? Right? Those big holes.
Absolutely. People are thinking, you guys still have your brains after all that? Oh my gosh.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So I landed in the personal development field first and started listening to people like Shakti Gaiwan and Bradshaw, Healing the Shame That Binds You, and kind of doing some personal development on myself and my family. And then that venture landed me into really, honestly, eating differently. Like I got really big on clean living. And I've been, gluten-free for 30 years and that kind of stuff, because I went to my first naturopath because you know what? I was having brain fog. I was having brain fog. I was in my 20s. I was having brain fog. I was dropping things. I wasn't remembering things. And it just so happened that one of the women I was working for said, I'm going to send you to my naturopath. I'm like, what the heck is a naturopath? I went and they did this testing and they found out I was allergic to all these things. And I'm like, I'm not going to have any sugar, wheat, or dairy, like ever. What's wrong with you? So, but I was uncomfortable enough and felt unhealthy enough that I started to make a change. And so I started to really fall in love with natural health. And I'm telling you, it wasn't well received. That's the interesting part, is that people used to call me a hippie. I was like, oh yeah, Deb, she's a hippie. At work, they used to call me Shirley MacLaine. Oh, Shirley MacLaine's coming to work today.
Nice.
Yeah. So anyways, I got into it, and the more I got into it, it's kind of like a bucket of ice cream, right? Maybe dairy-free ice cream and sugar ice cream. Like the more you get into it, the more you want to finish the bucket. And
yeah,
it was
I like the way you say bucket, not just a pint, but a bucket. Yeah, I did notice that. So anyway, keep going.
Yeah. So as I started to get into natural health, I felt more and more purposeful. That's all I can tell you. It was like an excitement. I ended up taking a massage course. On the second day of taking that massage course, I said I was going to be doing this for the rest of my life. And honestly, I ended up falling in love with massage, Ayurveda, aromatherapy, and starting to understand organs and age reversal. And I did. I had a private health studio for 27 years, and I did 30,000, I've had 30,000 clients in my day before I really shifted over to product development. I'm a formulator. So through that whole process, I started formulating. I fell in love with a couple of organs, and particularly one of them was the brain, right? Probably because mine needed repairing. I don't know, but
yeah,
I fell in love with the brain, and I fell in love with, and what really, it really sparked that on. I literally was watching PBS. I mean, when stuff comes to you, it comes to you. When it's right, it's right. Yeah. And my daughter was struggling, really struggling with a learning challenge. And we had gone to this tutor and that tutor and this tutor. And then I was watching PBS, and I was watching this brain doctor. And I was like, and I literally called my daughter. I'm like, Chloe, get in here. And she came into the room, and she sat on the end of the bed because I was watching it in my room. And she said, Mom, that's me. And I'm like, yeah, that's you. And so we started to research. And at that time, there was nothing but information. There was like, we know that there's these learning challenges. We know there's 27 different of them. We used to think there was just two, you can or you can't. I mean, that was it. Like, you can or you can't. You have two issues. When you're fine, when you're not. But there was no rescue. There was no except tutors. And the tutors weren't really landing a lot of results for us. And so I started looking into the brain from a learning challenge standpoint, because I was personally driven. And then I'm like, oh my God, this is the most gorgeous, beautiful organ. And then I started to really get funky and really started to learn more. That's how I started to really get into the brain. And so people thought, oh, she's a hippie. She's a hippie geek. Like, I'm a hippie geek.
Yeah, you're a smart hippie. What's fascinating about your story, because our audience, you're more powerful than you think, the whole belief system or spirits on a human journey, and everything happens for a reason. So here you are, highly creative, and obviously very motivated. So when you do something, you go 1,000%. So I can imagine in the music business, you partied your ass off all the way to the limit, to the point like, I'm going to die. So now you change it. And then you realize, shoot, I'm in my 20s. I'm not healthy. And so then, well, I need to do this. And then everything falls in its path. And then, of course, you have a daughter with a learning challenge, which is like your motivation and your purpose. And, here you are again, probably as you've experienced your whole life, always at the tip of the spear, always not popular. No one else understands you, right? Isn't that an entrepreneur or someone who's purpose driven? Nobody understands us. To my family, oh, I'm just the rebel with COVID. It's just Fred because he doesn't follow any rules. No, I actually do my homework. I'm actually intelligent. Oh, by the way, I am a doctor. And then, well, half my family is vaccinated. Oh my God. And I have to tell this story real quick. Yeah. I was talking to my mom yesterday. She's on speakerphone with my sister who isn't vaccinated. And my mom got vaccinated. She's 84 years old. So I'm like, I had it. I'm done. What is your problem? Mom, blah, 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 blah. And she goes, I dashed my foot against the stone. That's Psalm 91. So I did a spiritual video on Tuesday. And I was talking about, how genetically we are godlike. It's a long story. And I said, hey, even if you dashed your foot against stone, like you make a mistake, Psalm 91:9 says if you dash your foot against stone, and then God will still give his angels charge over you, you're still protected. So my mom goes, well, I dashed my foot against stone. I made a mistake. And I'm like, oh my God, Mom, because we're totally Catholic. I go, Mom, did you read the Bible? Because Catholics don't read the Bible. And she goes, no. I started laughing. And then she said, no, I watched your TMT. But the bottom line, and what I'm getting at is when you listen to your life story, every step has a purpose to where you are today. And it's a fascinating story to see how they come into play.
Absolutely. I always say when the teacher's ready, the students appear. And when the student's ready, the teacher appears. Like, it's like sometimes I think we know, and then sometimes we get pushed into knowingness. Like, yeah. And for me, it's when I start to feel elated inside, that little nervousness. I'm like, oh, I'm onto something. Something's really, or you can't let it go. You can't let it go. And it's fun. It's funny now to kind of go back and look at, I can say, oh, people used to call me a hippie, but it wasn't considered a compliment, right? It was like, oh yeah, she's kind of out there. Or that's where, like, I try not to use the word woo-woo because they're like, oh yeah, well, she's a little, woo-woo, right? I always say people used to call me a hippie. Now they call me for advice.
Yeah, exactly.
Right?
Well, we talked about this the other day, where you said hippies are the movement that created alternative, and not that it's alternative, it's actually real healthcare.
Yes.
Right. So that was the movement. And so here you are. 30 years
I know, right?
later.
And we were talking about that, how being born in the 60s and how hippies were, their hair was too long and they weren't conformed and they were drinking herbal tea and what was that all about? And they were kind of, and they weren't necessarily loved then, but it's embedded all over our society. There's anywhere you can go, you can get herbal tea. Anywhere you go, people like candles, crystals. Some people believe in the properties, some don't, but they love these crystals and all the things like, make love, not war. Look on your social media. How many people put out memes about love yourself, love your neighbor, be kind, kindness week, live happy campaigns. Like, it's all over the place and people are jumping on it with droves, right? And even in this last time, how people have really come to become more loving. Yeah. All right.
Cool.
One for the hippies.
What's that?
One for the hippies.
Yeah. Hey, there you
All right.
go. So you introduced me to this product, and it was amazing, so amazing that I wanted you to tell other people about it. So let us know about your brain thing.
Yeah. So this is my friend. It sits on my desk. I really, right? It's like, people have those squeezy things. I'm like, yes, right. Instead of playing football. So I really do love the brain. All seriousness aside, I really have a draw to the brain. I've taught many lectures called Brain Health is Sexy and Smart is the New Sexy. It truly is. And the more you recognize and learn about the brain, the more you want to captivate its youth, and you can. So just really simple science class. For some people that are into science, they totally will love this. And for those that aren't, you're going to fall out easily. Okay. So you have something in your brain called a microtubular. And just think of that tubular as the charging cord that you use for your phone, or the battery to your phone. You need it. And the more optimum, the more fully charged it is, the faster your phone works, the more apps, the speed, we all get it. What happens is our brain starts to age at 21. Now look at, most people are not concerned about their brain health at 21, unless, like, for example, my daughter, and guess what? My second one was to even teach me more. So I had 2 children out of 2 children that had learning challenges. And so, you start to realize that some things can be altered around the brain before 21, but for that average everyday, conversation, the brain starts to age. What that means is that microtubular is starting to unravel. Well, that's a problem, Because if you ever thrown away a charging cord to your phone because it's unraveling and it doesn't charge, it's exactly what's happening. So as this charging cord is unraveling, it cannot shoot the power that it needs to your neurons. So you've got this microtubular, the neurons are off the end of that tube and they transmit to other neurons. Now, if you don't know what I'm saying, you all know an uncle in the family that you're like, he doesn't really shoot on all cylinders. You know, when you say, oh, that guy's kind of shooting on one cylinder, that means that one neuron's shooting and the other one's like, bye bye, Sally, I'm going to the barbecue. So you need to have a strong charge in this neuron and a strong charge in this neuron to transmit communication, right? So what is in that communication? What happens when that strength is on? Well, your memory, your concentration, your focus, your clarity, and your brain stamina are all at optimum. And when people go brain stamina, what do you mean about brain stamina? I'm like, okay, look, I don't know how old you are. So if you're 50, think of 40, 40, think of 30, 30, think of 20. So stamina, I always say stamina, when you come home at 8 o'clock at night and your pal sends you a message, he goes, hey, let's go grab dinner. You're either like, remember the days where you were like, absolutely, let me jump in the shower, to I'm already on the couch. Like dinner, I had dinner at 5. So, or you're like, sometimes you're like, oh man, I don't want to pick up that phone because that person kind of just takes too much of my energy and it's later at night. You'd rather talk to that person in the beginning of the day because you don't have the energy for it, because your brain stamina is not like what it used to be. Your physical stamina could be, but your brain's not. So what's happening is that is unraveling. How it shows up in the world is things like, where's my damn keys, right? I can't find my keys again. Or phone numbers. You're relying upon your phone, or you don't remember birthdays. Thank God Facebook tells you whose birthday's coming up, because those kind of things, you've just lost your cognitive, your high cognitive function on. So
can walking I make a comment kitchen, real quick?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So let's translate, because other people may be thinking, well, hey, you call it 8 or whatever, but also as you get older, you change your priorities. But yes, there is an energy difference. So I see a priority change. I would say what I notice is the ability when your brain's not firing, you feel overwhelmed.
Yes.
That's what it is. And I think what would be more common is people feel overwhelmed with more conditions, because the more it's like if you want to use that as a phone charger, if you unplug your phone and you have 15 apps going at the same time, you're going to run your battery down faster. Whereas if you have those 15 apps, but your phone's plugged in, all those apps will run great. Your battery's still charged. So I think what it is you'll become overwhelmed if you add one more thing. Like people say, if one more thing happens, it's like if one more thing, but there's always going to be 10 more things, especially in today's life. So I would say even more commonly would be overwhelmed.
Yeah. I mean, you nailed it, right? And that's where that concentration, focus, and clarity comes in, so that when stuff happens, it's almost like it goes past you. It doesn't stick to you. It doesn't dogpile, right? So what I want to go back a little bit to the science explaining that I was doing, just so I can follow that concept. So you've got a microtubular, it's fully charged, it starts to unravel. So we start to lose those memory, concentration, and focus, and clarity, and stamina around 21 years old. The longer we go on in life, the more things happen in life, some trauma, some emotional trauma, some physical trauma, what have you, it starts to unravel and lose charge. So when people say, I take this for my brain, or I take ginkgo for my brain, or I take omega-3 for my brain, I want always people to understand those are fortifiers for the whole organ, and antioxidants and all the good stuff, and why people justify drinking some red wine. Antioxidants for the yeah, right? Yeah, he smiles. Antioxidants, hey, every Italian's got a good brain. So it's the fortifier. But what really turned me on about this product, and you got to understand, for me, it was like I was vibrating everywhere, is that I believe they finally found how to deal with the source. Like, the challenge is stopping that from unraveling. That's what you need to do. And so these great scientists, Dr. Jeffrey and Maxwell Stock, they were in the lab looking to cure Alzheimer's. This wasn't an accidental discovery. They were looking to cure something to stop, neuronal decline, stop the cognitive function declining. And so they found an extract, get this, in the green coffee bean. Now, my gosh, I wish I could sit on here and tell everybody, go boil the coffee bean and drink it, but that's not the case. You have to extract it. It's a proprietary extract. And when you digest it, so you take it as a tablet, it sends an enzyme called PP2A to the microtubule and starts the repair of the unraveling. It'll coat it in something called tau protein. So it stops the unraveling, corrects any damage so far, which is why someone like you would have a change. You'd feel a change because the repair is happening. Also, for me, it was 3.5 weeks. You know, my son was, he was 11 years old when I gave it to him. The box says 17, but I made that conscious choice as a conscious parent. I gave it to him at 11. People give out Fred Flintstone's, you know, vitamins, and they're like, woo. I'm like, no, I gave out EHT. So, and so I noticed for him, his difference was in about 7 days. And my brother, who works in the film industry for the last 40 years, who sleeps 3 hours a night, his change took 8 weeks, right? So he had a little bit of repair to do. So everybody has their own little different idea of repair, but you talked it, like the focus comes back, concentration. For me, I felt like I didn't realize how insidious brain fog is. Now you're talking to someone who's been taking care of their brain for 20 years. I was like, oh, I probably won't even notice a difference. Cause you know, when you're healthy and you take something preventatively, I'm like, I probably won't even notice a difference. I just know it's good for me. Well, 3.5 weeks later, I woke up and I called my colleague and I was like, holy bleep, bleep, bleep. I'm like, I feel like my brain just went to the gym and I was still lying in bed, right? And I said, I feel like so emotionally capable. Those were the words that came out of my mouth. And it was the brain fog that lifted. And I didn't even know I had it because I figured I had it handled. So that in a simple form, it's a tablet that you take. And Princeton, oh my gosh, they discovered this. So Signum Biosciences is at Princeton University. And they figured this out about 29 years ago. And we help them proprietize and take it to the marketplace out of the world of that side onto this side. About 6 years ago, Neil. 6 years, I've been taking about 6 years. Yeah. So I just wanted to finish that concept for people.
Nice. Well, again, what I noticed definitely immediately was more mental clarity. I noticed the speed of my thoughts were better. You know, some days it's especially after traveling, I notice I'm tired, but I also notice it's a lot of emotional fatigue, especially after I teach a seminar over the weekend. And now, I mean, the minute I tick's like, I'm totally dependent. And now I go teach seminar. I was like, oh my God, I only have 3 left. I need to get another shipment because I got to take it before I speak. You know, now it's almost like an addiction, but where that's a good addiction, right? Wow. I actually enjoy having more mental clarity. Yeah. And especially for entrepreneurs, because you're always innovating, you're always being creative. The world is changing so fast, man. We're pivoting one direction, pivoting the next direction. So the mental stamina, the emotional stability, the emotional stamina. Because man, when you got brain fog and all that, emotionally, you don't feel the same, right? You lose your self-confidence. And so, not that that's who we are, but it does get frustrating. So,
let me talk about that. The emotional part of the brain. It's a big deal because, you know, like even, you know, how you feel after you've cried and you're like, your body's so exhausted, you know, you've had that, or emotional trauma. I've had people that are, now look, I cannot legally say a lot of things that I'm going to say. So I can't legally tell you. What I can legally tell you is it stops the loss of memory, concentration, focus, clarity, brain stamina. That should be good enough. And when you say addicted, I find, you know what I find interesting? I take 2, right? I take 2. I had a concussion 3 years ago. 3 years ago. And I was scheduled 3 weeks after that to go do a 3-week tour through Ireland. My doctor's like, you're not happening. You're not going. I couldn't even look at a screen. So I took a lot more than 2. I was dancing between 4 to 6 a day. And I got on that plane and did that tour and felt fantastic. So, I mean, I can tell you my story. I can't tell you what it's made for, but I have seen people that have just been wiped out due to emotional trauma, divorces, you know, the whole over engulfing that's gone on, not only in the last, you know, decade, but the last 15 months have been pretty funky for people. And it has been, you know, ... saving for people to be able to take something to have their brain functioning, particularly during emotional times. I've had people come off medication that they were using for, you know, emotional conditions. I've seen people after a stroke that couldn't sign their name, take it and then sign their name. We had 2 NFL players that had a lot of CTE damage from, you know, a little bit too much football, a little bit too much sport, a little bit too much non-helmet stuff. And they took it and they donated their brains to science after they passed, just of the repair of this. So it's a really, really big deal. It's got lots and lots of science behind it, but really it's the everyday person that wants to not even just optimize. And you're right, entrepreneurs, but everybody's juggling now. You know, we've dealt. Yeah. I can see you got something to say.
No.
Yeah.
No, not really.
Yeah.
No, I'm good. I mean, well, I guess it's something to say is, okay, so now people are like, great, all this is fascinating. How do I get it? How do I check it out?
Yeah.
So we'll put a link. There'll be a website on here. We'll put a link, check it out. And I just want you to know that the reason I do this is, in my whole life, is about people finding God within themselves, to have that confidence, which I think we need, not I think, I know we need in this world more than ever. Number 2, we are here for a purpose, and our body is our temple. And so if we can't be healthy in our body, we're not going to fulfill our purpose. And I will also say, because I'm a chiropractor, there's tons of science that shows your spine health is related to your brain health, because you have proprioceptors, mechanoreceptors that respond to the movement in your spine that stimulate brain function. And one of the reasons the brain degenerates in your 20s is because people have abnormal spines that begin to degenerate in their 20s. And now, because of the world we live in, technology, backpacks, all this other stuff, and people are in forward flex postures, you're seeing teenagers with degenerative changes in the discs and the spine that you used to only see in people in their 40s and 50s. We're seeing that in teenagers. So, you know, I get chiropractic care, so that's great. However, we live in a very toxic environment as well. So being on a detox program, stimulating and taking this nutrient, keeping your brain health, because you lose your brain, you lose your body. You lose your spine, you lose your body. I mean, I think these are 2 of the most important things you can do to stay healthy and stay emotionally and spiritually strong through the world today, because we will get to the other side. And it's things like this that will create the new healthcare system. Once all this stuff of what's going on today is exposed, then the general public is looking for inside out health.
I love it. I love it. I mean, you know, what can I say? It's like ditto. And I think it's important. No, because look at, we don't know till we know. And so it's like, you know, why do we do this? Why do we get on here and share this? Because you know what? I was lying there as a mom who was versed. I was versed in health, but then came along someone on my TV screen that has happened to flip on, and a light bulb went on for me, and I got information, and I was able to start sharing that with my daughter, and it changed everything for us. And it really, truly, as much as it sounds like a Hallmark card, it is one thing at a time, one person at a time, one message at a time. And someone's like, wow, that's very cool. That's how this stuff works. That's how,
could be for those of you that are watching this could be the message that you've been praying for. So check it out. Thank you for sharing your expertise and your story. And I'm sure we'll talk and we'll do something like this again.
Absolutely.
All right. Peace. Thanks.
Bye.